Now, in this video we should pass our data from our service to our component. We have different options that we can use to pass data to our components. And by the end of this course you will get to know all of those options. But in this video we will focus on passing data from our service to our component, which means that by the end of this video our data from our COVID-19 API should be inside of our component and be ready to use. Before we do any code, let me explain to you how services work in Angular. You see, every service in Angular has this decorator of injectable. This injectable will give option to services to be injected into other features from Angular, like other components, guards, well, more services, and so on. But in overall, service itself is just the class that we can use. So, as we know that we can inject this service into our component and that we need to share the data, well, let's just start working on it. As our API will get summary data back to us, I will go to my summary folder and into components and open up this summary page Typescript file. In this file right now, I will import my data service that I have, and I will do that in my constructor. So to import it here, we must first create the property for it. So we can set this property to be a private property, which is often done in Angular, or a public property. For this example, I will use a private property and I will name this property data service, and we need to pass the type of it, and the type will be data service that we have. You can also see that automatically data service is imported here at the top from its own, well, service file. Now at this point, we have access to all of the data service properties and also methods, which means that we can use this getSummaryData method in our summary page component. So to use that method, I will write my code in my ng-on-init. This ng-on-init is a lifecycle hook from Angular, and it will run every time we load our page, well, every time we go to our summary page. And to be honest, whenever I come to this summary page, I should be able to get the data and present that data on a screen. So here what I will do now is I will use this .data service, which is the property that we created, which is our data service, and on it now we have this getSummaryData, which is the method that we have indeed, right? We can see that this here will return something, well, to us, and it will return from our HTTP module that we have. So you see this HTTP client will always return to us observable, which means that we can here subscribe to our getSummaryData. So .subscribe, and this subscribe will give some kind of data back to us. So data, and I will set the type of this data to be any, which is probably not smart, but we cannot really know which data will hold that API. It can often change, and also it can be updated by a team itself. But once we get that data back, we can, for example, console.log summary data, and let's pass that data to double check what we are getting here. Now if I would visit my local host and if I would open up my console, on the right side we can already see our data available to us, which means that we successfully passed our data from our service to our component, and we can see the data for all of the countries and the global data, which is that summary data that we really need. Now back to my code here, there is one last thing that I wish to do. Well, I will create the property of COVID data. I will set the type of it to be any, and even we can set this data to be equal to an empty object for now, because it is an empty object, we still don't have the data. And down below where we are subscribing to our getSummaryData, here we will use this .COVID data to be equal to our data, which means that now this COVID data will hold all of our data, and we can check that just by logging that down below. So still in my browser, I have this summary data, and indeed I was able to save my data in one of my properties. So now that we have our summary data, we can do something with this data. And for me, for example, what I wish to do is to create 3 simple cards here at the top, and inside of those cards I will present the exact numbers from this global object here. Those exact numbers will be these total confirmed cases, total deaths, and total recovered cases as well. One thing that you can see here is this 0 for the recovered cases, And this is not the problem on our side, this is the API issue, and as we don't have the control over it, we will just need to wait for the team to fix this issue. But this here won't block us from working with this API, so we can just continue. And now, as you know that I wish to present this global data here, well, let's go into the next video and create some markup for our cards which will hold our data.